please welcome everyone. So happy to be here. And welcome also. And I'd like to first introduce my colleague, Kirill Yovchev, who is the Sitefinity competence lead at Siili Solutions, working from our Geneva office in Switzerland.
And this is my colleague, Matti Kivivuoto. So he is responsible for our Sitefinity team overall, working for our backs, more or less, and he has our backs.
Yeah. And I'm stationed in Helsinki in Finland. So quick question. So what kind of people do we have here today? Anyone, do we have any Progress partners here? Raise of hand would be nice. Oh, a lot of, anyone working on Sitefinity? Oh, even better. And anyone from the customer side, like looking into, oh, that's very interesting. We'll keep you in mind. All right. But the most important thing actually is that although Kirill and I have been like very much involved in this case study, it's all about the team. So we work with the team first mentality, and I'm very happy to announce that our team has been ranked #1 in Europe with every possible indicator, even if you take the number of certified developers or number of case studies or whatever. So if you're looking for a global partner, we're one of the ones to talk to. Just here's our global presence. I mean, this is not global in the way that we're going to soon define, but still it's our best effort. So we're having a very small presence in the States, but a much larger one on the continent side. Then quickly about the agenda of the day. So first we're going to start with a definition of global in a proper way. Then we'll do a short overview of the case, talk a little bit why Sitefinity was chosen, and then the bulk of the presentation will be tackling the challenges that we encountered and what we see as the major challenges when you're building a global web presence. Okay, let's start with definitions. So here we are. We're on this blue marble, this classic photo taken in December 1972 by the Apollo crew from orbit. And I think that what this highlights is that if you take a little distance, you cannot even fit more than 2 continents at a time in the view. So that gives you kind of an appreciation of how big of a system we're talking about when we're truly talking about global. So let's get you a bit started. So anyone here know from which country do most of the people in the world come from? Come on, just, yes, that's easy. Who knows number 2? Finland. Well, almost. Oh, I was going to say Canada, but any other? India, yeah. I think the top 2 are kind of easy to guess. What about number 3? Oh, no. Far. US, yes. A round of applause for the United States. It's a significant position. Okay, but then the interesting part is the next one. Anyone guess who's number 4? What? Brazil? Almost. That's a good guess. It's actually Indonesia. But Brazil is not far from them. It's actually the next one. So very good guess. Next, anyone? Japan? No, it's far from that. Japan is a big country. It's actually Pakistan.
It's not really 5 by US.
Yeah. And then we're going to do one more because it's in the theme of today. Anyone guess? I'm giving already hints out from this morning. Hello, tractor. Anyone? Nigeria. Yes. Okay, so here's like half of the world's population mapped, and as you can see, it's far from what we conceive as like your normal web users. So when you're really tackling the blue marble, then you need to take into account that it's not US and the EU. So to sum it up, this is the numbers we're talking about, and bullet number 3 is especially interesting because we're all used to like that everything is written in Latin letters, but to be honest, that's not the only option. we have several other character sets that need to be supported. And one of the most trickiest parts are the ones written from right to left, like Hebrew and Arabic, for example. And then not only do we have different languages, we have different cultures. Yeah, there's plenty of seats up here. Welcome. And also, what's remarkable is that you cannot assume that the symbols we use here in the West are meaning the same also in the East or South. So a lot of things to consider. Okay, let's take a look at the case. Before I show it, there's a disclaimer. We're not obliged to disclose actually the exact agency, but I'm afraid that you will be able to deduct that. So it's not a crime, but it's just their wish not to be mentioned. So that's why we're talking about a UN organization focusing on world health, and I cannot say more. I think I'm already being too obvious. And by the way, if you check out the winners of the Website of the Year competition this year, Sitefinity Website of the Year, you'll find this winner also from the nonprofit section. And here's the fact sheet. So we're talking about 150,000 web pages. We're talking about 3 million unique visitors per week. We're talking about 200 departments in the organization. And then what we have now, I mean, this is a work in progress. It's far from done. And so what we have now, we've implemented 22 languages and 38 countries, and about more than 200 content editors are keeping the site updated. And they have created 50,000 content items, and we have 44 websites currently with 20,000 images. And if I'll give you a comparison. For example, we last year Maud Bernard from Wärtsilä.com, their marketing, was here giving a presentation about another global implementation we've done. They're currently having over 60 sites globally. So the numbers that we heard yesterday about hundreds of sites under one instance, they're not unrealistic. It's really possible. Although I think that you might run into serious trouble when you have over 100 websites under one installation, but that's a different topic. What more can I say? Maybe that they also have these so-called co-brands. So it's like in a commercial website, you have marketing sites or something like that. So it's really a nice mixture of everything. And the theme of today, Sustainable Development Goals, it's something that everyone should remember. And I have if you take a look at my Twitter account, I have DIY instructions for everyone. So the most important thing is to keep them with you all the time. So I have them here on my phone every day to remind me of what I'm striving for in the world. So not all sites are for profit. I'm sure that most of us still are very concerned about that. But every site has a purpose. And this is something that's really common also for, even if you're on the commercial side. And one of the KPIs that we've defined for this website is that how well the message gets through. Currently, we're reaching about 1 billion, or this organization is reaching about 1 billion users. But the Director General of this organization has set the target to 3 billion. So it's a really demanding target, and there's a KPI that's going to be very tough to meet. Of course, when we're here in the States, I think it's also very important to remind that this is also about spreading reliable information, scientifically proven information, because of all this other types of information out there. I think everyone should work for the benefit of all humanity. It's not something that it's for these government organizations or intergovernmental organizations only. And as mentioned, the SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals. And then let's take a look about why Sitefinity was chosen. So there are quite a lot of benefits, and a lot of them have been touched already. what I was missing earlier was this total cost of ownership, because that's one of the strong points of Sitefinity. If you take a look at the other top tier CMS systems in the world, Sitefinity outstands in this category. With the other global site that I mentioned, that Maud Bernard presented last year, they managed to cut their total cost of ownership into half, but while moving from Adobe to Sitefinity. And they actually gained also this flexibility of content management and more up-to-date information, because the threshold for content management is lower. So in the total cost of ownership, well, most of you might know, but I've just put down a couple of bullets what it means. And so it's not only the license and the setup, but for example, what's really important in these global setups is the training costs. Because if you take a look at the competition, some of these CMSs are so cryptic that you actually need to go on a several-day course on really in-person studying, whereas Kirill did a half-a-day workshop for Wärtsilä online, and that was it, and they just dug in. So it's like you get several percentage cost savings from that. Of course, you need to have the language support in place in this kind of setup, and that's luckily okay in Sitefinity, not a problem. And I cannot stress enough what Gartner Peer Insights also stresses, that this is the top CMS in the world in terms of content management experience. It's the most intuitive and most easy to use. And like every other project, we have the normal non-functional requirements of reliability, scalability, security. I mean, they don't go anywhere. And so far, with 8.5 years of experience together with Kirill, we've managed to tackle these very nicely with Sitefinity.
I just want to add a little bit more on the language support. So since we embarked on this journey together with Progress and UN, the right to left support was dramatically improved in Sitefinity for the last 1 year. I mean, the backend right to left support is really far from what it was 1 year ago. The multilingual capabilities of Sitefinity improved dramatically. There is a concurrent editing of the multilingual. That was something that actually doesn't exist in any CMSs on the competition. And the ease of use, Matti mentioned about half-a-day training. Actually, I have been doing training now, living in Geneva. Our trainings are 2 hours. That's it. 2 hours, and you are actually capable, because we do have, currently there are a few hundred, but they'll get a few thousand. The target is, with all the 200 departments, that every department is self-sustained, and every department can update the content as they wish. So ease of use is a key. So that was a major differential compared to when choosing Sitefinity across the other CMSs, ease of use, ease of creating content on your own, being independent, being in control. I hope that few of you were yesterday on the presentation from Alexander Krivinsky, something, sorry. But being in control, being your own man, and delivering when you need, what you need, and get the message through, particularly for the organizations that work in emergencies. Don't depend on IT to deliver your message. Now, it's key. For any business, you need the press release to go now. You need to just do it. You can't be bothered with IT on that. So.
One more addition. The original project, when we set up Sitefinity, that was actually a collaboration with Siili Solutions and Progress Software together. So just to remind that we were in it together, but of course now we're on our own. Okay, let's take a look at the first challenge. So when you're doing such an enterprise, you need to really do proper design work, and I'm not just talking about the pretty pictures. So where do we start from? I think the first question that everyone needs to answer is that, why do we need a change? And sometimes the answer will be that, well, we don't need a change actually now. So let's wait a year, let's wait half a year, let's see. Because, I mean, I'm seeing so many redoings of websites, and I see sometimes very little value, and definitely not the return on investment that was originally planned. But once you have this answered, you have a real reason, like this organization had actually good reasons for that, then you can move on. And the next question is, of course, like, what's the message? So what is this site for? And to do that, you need to look at your existing site, check the analytics, see what's happening, and try to figure out what the users need, and use every means that you have to get this information. You might want to do surveys, interviews. You might just like gather the feedback that has accumulated during the years of existence, and then once you have the general public's view, then you need to go back to your organization and talk with all the stakeholders, all the departments. So that it's like not biased in a way that it's that some department will feel that they're totally left out.
I want to contribute a little bit on that using analytics. When we actually analyzed the old site, we took a look at the malaria webpage. And the most clicked link on that website was on the bottom of the page. It was information what to do when you travel in the countries that they have malaria. But when we talked with the malaria department, they said, they are not our stakeholders, we don't want to talk to the public. We are talking to our highly technical officers, to ministries of health. They are our stakeholders. So you need to address your actual users. You need to talk. You need to know your audience. So when Matti asks who is who here and how many are partners or customers, you need to know who you are giving your message to. So know your audience. And sometimes you need to know that even you do have audience that's tiny, like these ministries, and they don't click. Actually, your funds are coming from there. And actually, they give the message that you get funded because of them. But they get elected by the general public. So you actually need to talk to the general public too. So that's key important. Know your stakeholders. Know your public.
And then when you start structuring the site, you know what the typical method is, that what I've seen, I've been doing websites for 20 years commercially. So what the typical approach is that we get a request for a proposal, and they state that, okay, here are our departments, so you feel free to use them for the navigation and the structuring of the sites. It's like the worst mistake that you could ever do. It's like totally giving disregards to your end users. So the thing is, what you need to do is that you need to look at the information architecture, and there are the experts that can help you with this one. And you need to look like from the end user's point of view and from the bird's eye point of view. How does the structure actually emerge from all the information that you have to be delivered according to your concept? And the concept is, of course, first. I mean, you cannot like. I've also seen an approach that a lot of these advertising agencies use. So they draw a pretty picture of the site with all the bling blings that are popular at the moment, and they start driving the development based on this pretty picture, where actually the web concept should be the driver. But that's not enough, because the website is never ready. So if you don't have a clear idea where you're going to, then it's useless, because then you start degrading the website immediately after the launch, which, by the way, I see all the time, even with our customers, because we're not keeping the site updated. So it's the customer's duty to do that. And we've seen it so many times that when you don't have a clear vision of where you're going, they start just adding content in a meaningless way, and it degrades the whole integrity of the website. So the vision is really a key. And of course, you need the metrics, how to monitor your success. And as said here, the key metrics, of course, is the reach, to reach out to the people of the world. And then, of course, we have qualitative metrics, of course, set to define like what kind of feedback do we want, and how do we want to see how this website to be seen, and this source of information. But in every case, this needs to be defined separately. There are no universal monitorings. Well, of course, in the commercial side, you have the money. That's easy. But otherwise, you need to also have the qualitative monitors. Very quickly, I want to highlight, because over 1 billion people in the world suffer somehow from visual impairment. I mean, in the easiest case, it's like myself that I'm having trouble seeing far. So for like viewing websites or mobile, it's not a problem for me, and I can correct my impairment with a pair of glasses. So it's hunky-dory. But then there are still hundreds of millions of people that have severe visual impairment, where it's not enough. You cannot get glasses that are strong enough to really be able to read the text in most cases. So people use readers, for example. So I mean, there's the website link. We'll be sharing this presentation somehow. Well, I don't know yet how, but follow us in the social media, and we'll be sharing it there anyway. So check out this W3Org's accessibility principles. They're a very good starting point to go forward, and try to find some tools to measure the accessibility, because sometimes you might skip something. And what was great in this case from the organization side, one of the stakeholders there was visually impaired himself, and was actively taking part in this work, helping us to co-create this excellent accessibility that we built in for this website. And one of the things that I want to highlight from these, otherwise very sort of the thing that hit me was this contrast thing. So typically you want to have text over some images, or you have different colors of background and different colors of font over the background. Sometimes the contrast between the text and the background is just not strong enough. So that's something that if you want to take out of this session to remember, because the other ones are kind of like evident.
Yeah, we have defined, to address the contrast ratio, we have defined rules that you can use that font size on top of that color. That's it. If you go lower, you can't. It doesn't fit. So it's key to have this when you design.
Then we already touched this topic a bit earlier, but here's a map of the world mapped in a way that it shows where the internet connection speed is really low. The yellow one is the low, and the blue one is the fast. There's Finland very fast, and Central Africa very slow. So, but if you take a look, remember the countries that we were looking at: Nigeria, Pakistan, Indonesia, those countries. Well, Brazil is a bit different, but a lot of these countries where the population density, for example, India, is very high. I mean, those countries have typically low bandwidth. So, if you want to really reach out with a global reach, or in our case, at least the half of the global reach, like the 3 billion, I mean, this is a thing to tackle, and Kirill will talk about it later when we go to the part of the technical implementation. And here's an image from Wikimedia strategy document, which kind of like in one image shows the way people browse the internet nowadays. So, well, I commute by train every day, and what I see is that people are like glued to their iPhones and their Android phones, and they're just like all the time browsing, and kids on the schoolyard, even on classroom room time, browsing their devices, and it's global, and we have now the latest numbers. Kirill just took out the latest numbers, and we were actually expecting that already last year mobile would overtake desktop in this particular case, but it actually happened this year. So now we can officially state that according to analytics, mobile is the preferred way of browsing the site. It's just by a couple of percentages over desktop, but still, it's now number one. And since when you design websites, you always look for the future, so it's definitely mobile first. I'm going to talk a little bit about go live strategy. If you have a small site, then it's easy. You just build a new version of the site on the side, and when come go live day, you just switch the load balancer to point to another address, and it's easy. But when you have a site with 150,000 web pages, it becomes more complex. So you need to decide on a strategy. because the Big Bang would take several years to complete. So typically what you need to choose is a gradual approach. And it has actually several benefits. We always encourage this agile way of working, and we also encourage an agile way of, in the sense of going live early, because then you start accumulating data from the real end users, and you start accumulating feedback. That's why it's so crucial that you have something live early on to get the data. But one night in Geneva, with the both of us were still, we didn't have even the office, we're at the hotel room, and Kirill had this idea that maybe we could get the best of both worlds and actually serve from two CMSs at the same time. And I mean, he's been working with, I don't know, 10 different CMSs in his lifetime. So I was thinking that, yeah, if Kirill thinks it's doable, then it must be doable. So I'm gonna show you what happened. So on the left, what you see, no, sorry, my left, your right. So here on the right, actually, this is served from the legacy system. The look and feel is actually not that super different, but the most important change was that we added this mega menu to the header, and made a couple of changes to the header to make it a bit more spacious and highlight the different languages and regions better. So, well, I'll actually Kirill can explain how you did it.
Okay. So generally, this wasn't just my idea. I have worked with a couple of very skilled guys in the organization, not in our team even. And we were discussing this problem that we need to go slowly, but we get the usability problem. People browsing between the old and the new content in the same kind of system, they would see different UI, and it feels kind of inconsistent. What happened? That's what the normal user would ask. So we decided to keep it more or less consistent, is that we are going to inject the header and the footer from Sitefinity into the old content that will keep being served. This is now running for 1 year in that kind of mix. So request comes from Sitefinity, Sitefinity sits in front. If it cannot serve the request, it goes to the old origin, takes the HTML from there, replaces header and footer in the mega menu with that, and then returns the old content. So you actually end up with some kind of container that has inside the content, that's the important one. But it's actually a bit more tricky because there are these 30 co-brands served from the old system, and they look different. They can't have the old header, so there are some exceptions for that. But it's kind of doable. That's one approach. We had several other approaches, but the rigidity of the old CMS, that's like 15 years old and dying, really dying, didn't allow us to actually go with some kind of JavaScript approach to inject that. And this is more like SEO friendly because you have those injected and replaced. So I think I'll continue further with the next challenges. So that's the button. Yeah. So the next challenge is when you need to run this global site. Matti mentioned that we are reaching at the moment 3 million people each week. And that results in 45 million requests to the system every day. And that's on the good day, when there are no outbreaks, when there are no alerts, nothing important happens. But if there is an outbreak or something that happens and the traffic skyrockets, it can go tenfold. So we have been running it now for 1 year, and we had a couple of these incidents to say, that there is something happening in the world and there is an emergency situation, people go to the site. And the traffic, we didn't get tenfold, but we got 2-3 times the traffic. So we needed really, really rock solid infrastructure. And our criteria for that was that we need to have it always there. So when you are bitten by a snake, and when you try to actually find what happens, you Google it, you find the link on the site, you click it, and if it doesn't open, you die. So you can't have that. So it needs to be really, really highly available. Then it needs to be really, really reliable, because whatever you do, it shouldn't go down. So you need to test your infrastructure for failure. You need to simulate failure and test it. So test for failure. Inject the failure, see how it behaves. So do that. It needs to be resilient, and that kind of a bit overlaps with the reliable, but you really need to make sure that it's not penetrated and something cannot kind of take it down. Then it needs to be secure, because you cannot allow any random people going in and doing malicious stuff. So at the moment when we started the project, there was even a lot more requirements about encrypting the content. This was like mandated from UN. Thanks God, this went away. Yeah. And last thing, if you want to reach the people who are around the world, it needs to be responsive. It needs to respond to you wherever, on which point of the world you are, fast. So this is, I think, Progress guys have a session of making the architecture so that it's scalable, so that you have access from whichever point of the world you are. We've decided that we are not going to approach it by replicating the Sitefinity environment around the world, having data centers all around the world, having replication of data and so on. So something what we did, we actually employed a CDN. So we used Amazon CloudFront for CDN, and a few good things for the CDN. So it caches, we are caching HTML on the CDN. So not just images and static content, but HTML. So we employ short TTL for caching. So this means that the content is not cached for too long. And with the latest release of Sitefinity, it actually got better because they have this distributed cache. So it kind of improved the caching. So we actually get utilization of something like 5% misses of the cache. So consider that. So when we have a spike, our backend doesn't actually react to that, which is the actual Sitefinity. That in the real, like in the other customers, is the one that actually gets the traffic. So that's handled by CDN. The CDN serves as denial of service attack prevention. So it can actually get multiple requests, scale horizontally, doesn't matter. Every user with the CDN gets response times in milliseconds because they usually see the cached page. And if, for some reason, the Sitefinity environment goes down, there are multiple reasons for that. And if that happens, the CDN can serve stale content. So you still actually find what to do when you are actually bitten by a snake, because the stale content will sit in the CDN. So when there is an error from the backend, the CDN will serve the stale content. So the CDN provided this kind of approach. So there is a different, there are challenges using CDN because of the caching, but all of them are overcome. And generally it lowers your investment also in the infrastructure. Because you need small machines, you get less hits to your Sitefinity environment. So CDN really, really help to make this resilient structure. Otherwise, there is nothing special on the backend. 3-tier, servers, database, load balancer, everything in Amazon works like a charm in one region. So that's about the infra. Then the next thing what we had to do when we actually did the process, we actually had to set up really straightforward development process. We are developing a huge website. So for us, the development process was supposed to be really straightforward. So something what we did was that we, as most of you guys who are the partners, we took Git and we actually stuck to a Git flow. So Git flow makes sure that you have a big, good branching strategy. You actually run with, choose one, stick to it, revision after every 6 months if something doesn't work. Then we actually tried to build after every commit, test after every commit. Review your code. Like when you review your code, the knowledge of your code base across your team goes goes up. So if one developer implements one feature, the reviewers are going to actually know what happened. So do the code reviews. And the best way to do that is pull requests. And the last one is, like, I think one Microsoft guy was yelling, developers. I would yell, automate, automate, automate. Automate your deployment, automate your build, automate your complete CI/CD pipeline, automate your tests. One thing that we actually found very, very challenging with this highly content-produced environments, where the bug is something that's produced by users clicking around and creating multiple variations of like 3 widgets in that combination, 4 widgets in that combination. and you don't actually know the combinations, is to actually run, and you change CSS, and you change styling, and you change, you have a risk on that, hitting it. We start employing pixel testing. So you take a screenshot of production, screenshot of your release candidate, compare them, and if there's a above threshold, it fails. It stops the deployment, someone takes a look. It might be good, but there's a person involved on that. So really automate. Automate your build process and employ review. So then something what we also need, we found out in these global sites and large organizations is that you do have these 3 levels and 3 paces of doing development. So the first pace, that is done by your normal average editors. That's what happens continuously every day. That's like content creation. That's your development of the website because your website is actually the content of the website. So they use combination of widgets, they create news, they create different content items, and they actually populate on the website. But then something that Sitefinity is really, really great of is get development that can be done by your champions. Find across these editors champions who know how to use the features, give them more permissions, train them how to use page templates, train them how to create forms, train them how to create campaign pages, train them how to use JavaScript CSS widgets, or let them do it, put it on the page template, train them how to create new navigation widgets. And basically because of that, you get this second level of multi-page development. And the last one is, of course, code. That's usually the partner and so on. So something what's in Sitefinity is that in this organization is that you have multiple vendors coming in. So that's probably the last challenge. So on the practices, we actually found few models of development. So I kind of went through them a little bit, but this is the summary. So pages, the next one is like page templates and so on by champions. And then what we actually found is that a lot of the organizations want to employ small agencies to create these campaign sites that are very cool looking, they have usually short life cycles, and they need still content management. So doing the headless CMS of Sitefinity, create your content types, expose them through the OData web services, and get that with the multilingual support, with security, with workflow, and that is, they don't have to care. You get an agency that knows JavaScript and HTML and SAS, and they do that. And they actually interface with the JavaScript, your headless CMS. And they host it in some bucket somewhere in S3, or in the blob storage in Azure, or in server somewhere. And they embed it with
There's absolutely no restrictions for the technology in this approach.
Yeah. And then the other 2 are more development, like resource packages to get the look and different look and feel. And the last one is like widgets, components, and so on that contribute to your code base. So the last challenge, more or less, that I want to get on the development is that you go live. Your target with any model is to go live early. And when you go live, your developers target that they become your operations, the DevOps keyword. So, and try to automate, monitor what you have, put a lot of monitoring, collect a lot of data, and get alerts. At the beginning, the stuff is going to go bad, but then you kind of keep doing the monitoring. So then try to minimize effort of running the site. Because whenever you find an incident, try to actually recover it with automated way. So, and because you get multiple people who contribute to the code, probably multiple partners, so get the governance on that. So, and the last one on the support is like employ Progress. Progress has great support, and we have been running with Mission Critical for quite a while, really happy. They give suggestions, they give support, so we have been really, really happy with that. We have tried to employ them as a first level support for critical stuff because we don't have 24/7 support. I don't want to be woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning. So for that purpose, professional services, not professional service, Mission Critical helps a lot.
And it's really expensive to set up your own 24/7 organization.
Yeah.
Hugely expensive.
Yeah. So I'll go to next point and give the mic to Matti. Because
okay, let's move very fast. This is your typical scenario when you don't have any kind of governance for the code. So all the departments, they have their own needs and they employ their own vendors, and or the organization like a public sector typically has rules that you need to issue an RFP for every case, and this accumulates a huge number of vendors to serve the purposes. So what's happening is that all of these vendors are doing in a worst case scenario, different versions of the same functionality over and over again. And that's horrible waste of time, and it degrades the user experience of the backend, because the end users don't know which widget to use when they have like 5 case study widgets to choose from. So what's needed is that you need to add some guidance to the process. So in an ideal situation, you choose one of the vendors as your kind of main partner. But in a smaller setting, you could easily have multiple vendors sitting around the table. It's not a problem. But the whole thing is that you have the stakeholders around the same table, and along comes department 1. Okay, we have this need. So the thing is that the need doesn't need. Please don't bring it in a way that I need a new widget, I need a new module, but have it come to the table as form of a use case. So I have this new use case that hasn't existed before. So how can I tackle it? And then we put our heads together and come up with a solution. Okay, we might take this existing widget and maybe just extend it a bit, and then it could serve the purpose. And then you get like a minimal development effort to reach the use case. So this kind of guidance helps in like removing the waste that typically is accumulated in a normal scenario without any kind of guidance. And then to kind of finalize the whole process, then you decide on a common definition of done. So it's also a kind of insurance policy for the small vendors, because then they will know already in advance that what's expected of them, so that it doesn't come as a surprise in the last phase when they have already done the implementation, small implementation. Then they contact us and we say that, okay, do you have your tests in place? Did you review your code, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have this long bulleted list, and they say, well, no, Fred from our department did it on his own last week, and so it will not pass the criteria. So we need to set this definition of done and set in place a review process, because in some cases also it's also about like moving the functionality into support mode, and then another vendor needs to take care of code done by another one, which is something that typically no one wants to do. I'll actually move on. I'll do a recap of this so that we can have at least a couple of questions. So it's all about like being able to collaborate together and develop reusable components, not doing the same thing over and over again with different versions, and extend the functionality and take into account the maintainability. And also don't forget the content editors. They're not your main end user group, but it's still important. And then when you have these guidelines and best practices, put them into your purchasing process so that you have already a list ready, a template ready. So because it's so wasteful to have these RFPs and proposals. So to minimize those, at least have like a list of everything that needs to be taken into account, ready-made in one template that you can reuse and reuse and reuse. And then I'm going to leave the last words to Kirill.
Yeah. So because I have been responsible for now implementing some of the governance, something that everybody thinks when they see governance. They think, that's going to block everything, that's going to stop everything, this is a bureaucracy, we don't want it. Actually, no. What is happening is that everybody aligns on the same vision. Remember those 3 billion that we need to reach? Everybody aligns on that. Everybody aligns on reuse. So reuse your taxonomies, so whenever the new widget is developed, a new content type is developed, it works with the other ones, because it's developed by a different vendor, and they don't know. Align on your content types, so you don't develop same content type that does almost the same thing. So build on top of it. Build on top of your widgets, don't develop single-purpose stuff. So this governance actually allows you to minimize your total cost of ownership and actually gets you further and faster out in the market. Because if you utilize your champions and you come with the business problem to them, they'll probably identify the gap, and the gap is not going to be that big, but that big. And then your kind of time to market will be shorter, a lot shorter compared to a huge RFP process, a new development, and something that will be obsolete in 3 months. So that's on the governance, and I think we are sharp on time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of minutes probably for questions. Or...
No.
Okay. No. Okay. Then find us.
Find us
here.
Yeah.
We'll promise to talk with anyone, anytime. So. Thank you.